bringing back not bringing back, but bringing the Warnberger to France. So certainly all of that aside, Simon Pettijohn, what say you?
I think right now his championship hopes rest on Pocono because that's where he did win, holding off Rossi at the Indianapolis 500. Similar layout, similar distance, the 500 miles. I think he needs to get a result at Pocono. Otherwise, I think you could say it's a two-man race for the title at this point.
Well, you mentioned Alexander Rossi. Certainly he's one to look at over there in the Andretti camp and did his big contract extension. And that's the thing about IndyCar and motorsports in general. They typically don't divulge how big the contract was, but my guess is it was big enough for him to not look in the direction of Penske, or Penske to not look in his direction. Andretti sealed a deal with Alexander Rossi, which was a make-sense deal. We talked about it here on the show a couple times, but Alexander Rossi, he certainly is in it to win it this year.
Well, let's talk about the rumors with Penske. The only way Penske is going to go back to 4 cars is if the car count started dropping again. And right now, the car count is at a good number where Roger is not obligated to provide an extra car to make sure that the numbers are covered, Tom. There was never a situation, I think, where they were even thinking about going back to 4 cars. Now, say when the hybrids come and the teams can't afford them, then maybe you'll see them go back to 4 cars at that point. But I don't think there was ever a inkling, unless Pagenaud was struggling and did not win the Indy 500. I think that was the only scenario that you would have seen Rossi make the move to Penske, and it would have been a trade for Pagenaud, possibly seen Pagenaud maybe go to somewhere like Andretti. But I think that was the only way that Rossi was going to end up with Penske, was something where Pagenaud continued his struggles. The win at Indy, I think, ended the possibility of that, and then you have Ganassi with a happy situation with Dixon and Felix Rosenqvist. That closed the door at Ganassi. So if Rossi had gone anywhere else, he would have been taking a step down, in my opinion. So that was the only logical decision, was to re-sign with Andretti.
You know, I want to stir the pot, or stoke the heat a little bit. I'm going to feed off of your tweet here. You said, let the funny season begin. And you threw a little nugget out there that I don't know. I've started seeing the rumors, but you threw a little nugget out there on Twitter this week about Elio to Foyt. Let the funny season begin. Where did that begin? Is that a rumor? Where there's smoke, there's fire? But go ahead.
Actually, that was a retweet from David Land, who made that announcement. That additionally came through Jim Aiello of IndyStar.
Well, David Land, he obviously called the McLaren deal, so David Land obviously called the McLaren deal, so he's got his sources. But what are your thoughts? I mean, is this a real thing, you think, or is this a thing, or?
The question in my mind is why. We see that Tony Kanaan is throwing with Foyt. There's rumors that Matthias Lace is on the out at Foyt. He would have to give up his Penske deal in sports car in order to do it. I don't see what he's gaining there. I mean, he was very unhappy the year when he was a back marker for most of the season with Penske. The year before, he made the jump to sports cars. So why would he put himself through more pain of a full season of running at the back of the field in an uncompetitive car? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me when he has a chance with at least Indy, and he has a car that's capable of winning. Until Foyt makes a big move forward, which I don't think they're ever going to make at this point, I don't think it's worth Elio running at the back of the field just to be in IndyCar again.
Well, it's better for Foyt than it is for Elio. The question is Foyt able to make that kind of a deal to him where, going back to money, we don't know because it's undisclosed. It's not like NFL or NBA or MLB where contracts are disclosed. We know they make very good money. I mean, there's obviously no doubt about that. But it would be very good for Foyt, and TK has not been able to. I mean, I think we're looking. How do I say this without being abrasive toward two very fan favorites? I like them both very much. I've talked to both of them. Super great people there at the track. But It's kind of like two old guys playing chess at the retirement home, if you will, and talking about the times that were. I don't know that having TK and Elio on the same team with Foyt, that's what it reminds me of. It's like a bunch of old guys sitting around talking about the old times. That's what I think about every time I see Johnny Rutherford, which is great. I mean, Johnny Rutherford's a legend. He was, which speaking of legends, obviously he was at the track talking about the legends. But at some point, we got to realize, hey, those are great memories to have. Well, let's never forget them. But are you the future of our team or our franchise? And I don't think that's the case with Elio.
Well, I remember it's like the great triathlete Paul Newby Fraser said in 1992. As long as you are competitive, your sponsors will be there to back you. But when you are not, they are going to abandon you. And I think the question is how much longer? I mean, HBC Supply has been great to the Foyts, but how much longer are they going to be willing to stay with them if progress is not being made? I mean, great. I mean, they have great drivers in name, but like you said, it's all about now and what are you doing for me lately? And right now, I just don't see anything that says Foyt's making any progress toward the front, and I don't know if Elio Cassadevis coming in would really change that. We thought it would with bringing Tony Kanaan in. It hasn't happened that way, other than maybe one good run at Indy that was, scratched because of a flat tire. But beyond that, I really can't think of anything where Laced or Kanaan have really done anything special over the last, say, 18, 20 months.
No, absolutely. So we'll see how it goes. That's why we call it the funny season, because a lot of the things, the stories, the stuff make us laugh. Of course, obviously, this is our NFL preview, but real quickly, and I'll get your thoughts on some Notre Dame talk and some NFL talk before we got to move on down the road, mosey on down the road. But Scott Dixon, Will Powell, Ryan Henry, Soto, Graham Rahal, Felix Rogens, and James Hinchcliffe round out the top 10 in standings as we roll into championship season, if you will.
And I think you could pretty much omit all of those drivers from the associated talks. I think pretty much every driver that you mentioned is secure for 2020. There was some talk that maybe the results weren't there for Rosenquist. They might give him a quick boot out like they did Ed Jones last year, but I think Ganassi is very clear this is the guy that they wanted from year one. Even last year, the year they went with Jones instead. So I think he is safe at least for another season. However, though, if he struggles again in 2020, I think Rosenquist could be in question. And like I said with Hinchcliffe, well, I'd be curious to see what the McLaren deal does for putting him maybe close to the front. Granted, he's also hit a little bit of a wall here the last few months. And I think a guy that I think would be eager for this McLaren acquisition, I'd say, would be James Hinchcliffe. And maybe one final chance to probably give him a boost to see if he can get further up on the roster as far as challenging not just for race wins, but for championships.
Absolutely. Hinchcliffe is certainly one of my personal favorites. We've talked to him on the show. We've talked to him at the track. And congratulations to him over the past week or so. I know he tied the knot with his lovely bride there, and some awesome pictures that they shared on Instagram and Twitter. So congratulations to James Hinchcliffe on getting married and starting that chapter of his life. But, yeah, you're right. I root for the guy, and certainly remember back when he was just hurt unbelievably, almost died at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, see him make a comeback. So as a fan, he's one of my personal favorites. So I root for him. So I hope that this McLaren deal works out. Well, hey, really, we've got a couple more minutes with you here, and we got to move on down the road because it's our NFL preview. We are going to have Rick Riggen on later on, our official college football contributor. I know you know Rick too, and he's a big Notre Dame blogger and follower. But bring us into the fold of up there in South Bend with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You said last week or the week before that you thought Notre Dame was highly overrated. Well, they are every year, but they have a schedule every year that seems like. Pardon me?
I still do.
Yeah. So go ahead. We're 14 days away from. We're 14 days away from the start of the college football season. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame and college football? And what are your thoughts on Sweeney and his comments this week as well? Bobo Sweeney, sorry, go ahead.
You got a lot of potential with this roster, but that's the thing, though. I mean, you have Chase Claypool at wide receiver coming off an injury. You're wondering who is there with as far as possibilities at the wide receiver spot beyond him. Brock Wright is also a little bit coming off of being banged up last year at tight end. Tony Jones Jr. same at running back. And you have a couple new calls on the offensive line. And then, obviously, now that the pressure is solely on Ian Book, and he handled that pressure, so you got to buckle under it. So I think there's questions at offense. And then defensively, I mean, you have Julian Okwara there on the defensive line, but you have question marks, I'd say, at linebacker, where you're bringing in, a guy that's got potential in Shane Simon, but can he be the same, force like, say, Drew Tranquil was, Jerry Tillery, et cetera. And then at the back, yes, Kyle Hamilton's had a great fall camp, but not always does a great fall camp turn into a great season. And, of course, obviously, that secondary depth's also been cut. Sounds like Devin Allen is going to transfer, so that's another player that they lose from the depth of that secondary. So be very curious to see how things go for them. But to say that they are a lock for the college football playoff, I would say absolutely not. Because you still have to find a way to beat Georgia. You still have to find a way to beat Michigan. And even some of the games at home, I'd say the Stanfords, the USCs, et cetera, those games are no gimmies.
Well, right there also in your backyard is Ann Arbor, and that's the big house in Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. I don't know. Every year we say, Jim Harbaugh can make it happen. He seems to fall short every year, and right now I don't see any signs on the radar that that's going to change. Unless you're a Michigan Wolverines fan, you can give me a ton of reasons of why it's going to change. But as you look at and talk about the Michigan Wolverines up there in your backyard, what are you guys talking about?
They have to beat Notre Dame. I think that's the thing that gets the season going and gets them in position. If they lose that ball game, I'd say their chances in the Big Ten are almost next to nothing at this point, because that tells me if they can't beat a team like Notre Dame, they're going to have trouble against teams like Ohio State and all the other big dogs in the Big Ten. That factor in my mind just sticks out like a sore thumb. And, I mean, that's a game that they absolutely have to have any realistic chance, I think, of getting anywhere in the season. If they don't get that game, I think their season is literally on the rocks for the rest of the way. And then, I mean, even with that, if they get by, I mean, look at the schedule they have. I mean, they have a very scary game, I would say, on September 7th against an Army West Point team that is greatly improved, for one thing. Even though that game's at the Big House, that's a game that if they come out flat, they can easily lose that game. The trip to Penn State, it's going to be a tough one. And then, obviously, right after that, the Notre Dame game at home. And then the big question is can they find a way to beat Ohio State? And even though, yes, Ohio State has a new coach, I still think the things that Urban Meyer planted, the seeds in there, are still present. So that, again, is going to be a game where I still have my doubts as to whether or not they can beat Ohio State.
Matthew Embury, appreciate you joining us today, breaking down these breaking news with McLaren agreeing to a 2020 full-time ride with Schmidt and Arrow and Chevy dumping Honda there. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll keep in touch with you, obviously, throughout the rest of the season as we get ready to roll into college football season as well. Matthew, where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
Twitter is the place to go for me, MATTEMBURY, and big thank you, and obviously, feeling bad for a couple of my Knoxville Nationals favorites, and Paige Poliak had a big crash yesterday, thankfully walked away unharmed, of course, a loss. And for poor Harley White, I mean, what else she's been through with the big fun, almost took her life several years ago, had a couple chances to make a big splash this week, and $5 part breaks in the B main. It cost her a chance to get to the A and possibly get into the main show tonight. So tough luck to both of them, but they're two tough little ladies. They'll bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Matthew, you have yourself a good weekend. We'll talk with you soon.